Alright, here we are, episode 3 of Your Homebrews, season 2. Today we got one patron homebrew and 2 fan homebrews to go through. As you probably remember, patron supporters got priority in terms of when their creations are presented. However, as many of them sent more than one work, I chose one of them to be presented first for your enjoyment. Now we will be going into some casual viewer creations as well. Expect that for many episodes to come, the first entry will belong to a patron supporter and the rest to everyone else. I think that spacing them out a bit is fair, as they already got 2 first episodes all to themselves. But before we begin, remember to like, comment, subscribe, ring the bell, the whole shtick. You know what to do. If you can, support me on Patreon, where you get access to voting power, ability to send me ideas for videos, early access to videos, scripts, and a lot more additional content. If you prefer to send me singular donations, do it through Ko-fi. I would appreciate it very much. With that out of the way, let's start with a bizarre idea of patron supporter, Behemoth. The Wretched. The idea for a new 40k faction, an undead faction. Not murderous metal, totally not Terminator-inspired skeletons or Egyptian mummies, but souls that were brought back to their bodies. The creatures that care not for conquest, glory, or power, but a total destruction of the galaxy. The idea is that for whatever reason, the warp didn't accept these bodies and sent them back to their rotting corpses. When they regained awareness, they realized that they are in actual limbo, neither alive nor dead. No peace and no mercy for them. This caused them to go mad and push forward with the idea of obliterating the setting as a whole, growing in power with every body they add to their number, be it human, orc, Tau, Eldar, or even a Tyrannid. They are weak to anything which is anti-psyker, because, by the end of the day, their power comes from the warp. Now, the idea that was sent to me was a bit basic, but I think it has some potential. There are minor entities in the warp that could be the reason for the existence of this faction. Maybe personification of the very entropy of a universe. Not just death and rebirth, like Nurgle, but the spirit of a true ending of a universe. Growing impatient and trying to speed things along. I think it could be fun minor faction. Not that GW will do anything similar or bring forth any minor faction onto the tabletop. We don't even have proper Dark Mechanicum yet. In 40k, at least. Honestly, the GW not creating any minor factions for the tabletop is entirely separate discussion, but it's not one we will have today. So let's move to the first creation not made by a patron supporter. Lazarine Hounds, made by Brian Hull. Now, I know that people overall are sick and tired of Space Marines, because GW loves them more than any other faction. But this homebrew? This is peak. Their heraldry is a green war dog with a halo on the white shield. They paint their armor white with a green trim, power packs and symbols. Officially, their gene seed is that of the Imperial Fist Legion. Officially. Their homeworld is Saitama Majoris, a feudal world of humid subtropical archipelagos located in the galactic north of Zeist sector. Not that far from the homeworld of Crimson Dragons, in fact. They are currently ruled by High Marshal Gerard Fontari, and they have 3 battle cries. By brothers of blood and brothers of fire. Bite like a saint. With bandage and bite. From that alone, you probably have more than a couple of questions. So let's answer them. As I said, Lazarine Hounds are officially an Imperial Fist successor chapter founded in either the 5th or 10th founding. The official records can't agree which one is correct. Before the founding, the world of Scythia experienced a large chaos incursion, with elements coming from off-world to support it. Enemy forces were eventually fought off with the help of the Imperial Navy and limited guard reinforcements, but the bulk of the fighting was done by local warriors, under the overall command of a particularly heroic High King of the time, Leonard the Savior, as he would be later called. The most important battle of the war took place in Avaroch, the planetary capital that fell to the Chaos forces at the start of the war. Leonard, who was then a prince, managed to evacuate with his loyal subjects and mount a resistance against the followers of the Dark Gods, taking his father's crown when he fell defending the capital. After almost half a decade of constant war, he was ready to retake his capital. During the battle, High King found himself separated from his army and personal guards, except for his loyal warhound companion, Lazaronus. The monarch and his companion were forced to retreat into a small chapel, where they held their ground before black-cladded warriors. King Leonard was gravely wounded by the Chaos Champion, 2 masters of the blade striking each other. The king falling wounded, and Chaos Champion falling dead. As the remaining servants of the darkness surged forward to kill the king, it is said that Lazaronus jumped over his master and into the doorway, where he was filled with a blessing of the God Emperor's holy wrath, personally slaying 100 of heretic warriors to defend his master, coating his white fur in crimson. Eventually, the leader of all heretical forces, Balazar the Prophet, arrived to kill the king himself, landing a great blow on the loyal hound, but not before Lazaronus tore great chunks out of the armor and flesh of a heretic's throat. With the Emperor's blessed light, the High King managed to recover, and using the opening, he slayed the heretic in a second wind. With their leader dead, the heretic forces broke and were slaughtered. The royal guard found their king holding his dear friend in his arms. Loyal Lazaronus died of his wounds in the arms of his master, surrounded by the corpses of enemies and royal guard, who knelt before him in his final moments. The royal hound was eventually canonized as a saint by ecclesiarchy officials of Scythia. The validity of a Scythia branch of the imperial cult and its animal saint is hotly debated, but still tolerated among members of the wider church, as it is highly localized, loyal, and backed by a Space Marine chapter. It was the story of Lazaronus who inspired the Marines who would establish their chapter on Scythia. They decided that with their new home, they should adopt its culture. As such, they named themselves after the local saint, and it is the depiction of a royal hound and saint that they chose as their symbol. Lazarine Hounds follow more closely the teachings of the Black Templars rather than Imperial Fists, while possessing their own set of unique traits. For example, they use crusader squads, chain their weapons to their arms, and believe in divinity of the emperor. Though the Scythia branch of the faith isn't as overtly zealots as the Black Templars, and while Lazarine Hounds are often on the crusade, they aren't part of Eternal Crusade. They see limits placed within Codex Astartes as more of a suggestion, but they know they don't have the fame, history, or prestige to be shielded from consequences like Black Templars or Space Wolves. So while they are often over the 1000 marine limit, they don't practice legion building. The trait that separates them from the other chapters is the integration and reverence the chapter has for their apothecaries. Every officer in the chapter was once an apothecary. New chapter masters are almost always senior apothecaries or chief apothecary himself. If a sword brethren is selected to lead a crusader squad, he will not be able to do so officially until he completes at least the basic of apothecary training. Though it rarely happens, for most brothers of the chapter do so voluntarily. The only exception to this rule are chaplains, who don't need apothecary training to hold their position. The tradition of apothecary leadership had affected the doctrine and tactics preferred by the chapter. While willing and able to use whatever tactics and strategies of Adeptus Astartes are required for victory, the Lazarine Hounds prefer to act as groups of melee-focused infantry kept in reserve of the main force. They wait for a perfect moment, be it a breakthrough, collapsing of their own line, or allied force getting cut off, before the Lazarine Hounds charge into the lines of enemies, breaking through their lines in order to rescue surrounded allies, or smash directly into enemy forces, leading the breakthrough. Their charges are famed for the distance they can traverse while punching through enemy lines, and how long they can sustain themselves in the fight. That's where the apothecary training comes in handy, as the charging hounds keep patching each other up to ensure they won't slow down or stall the advance. Funnily enough, the Lazarine Hounds are known to be rude, aggressive, even condescending, but when outside the combat, they spend time working in the field hospitals, healing guardsmen, helping efforts of Sisters Hospitaller, or just help civilians. They take part in search and rescue operations for the sake of saving mortals. This ensured their popularity among the masses, even though when saving lives, they sound harsh and angry. Those actions also ensured that many of Order Hospitaller see them as close and valuable allies. Outside those ties and keeping enough sway within local ecclesiarchy to keep cult of the Lazaronus on Scythia as tolerable practice, the chapter prefers to stay out of politics, preferring to keep to themselves while searching for a crusade to join. Another interesting tradition of the chapter are oaths of honor. Forces hounds fight alongside of, be it guardsmen, sororitas, astartes, scitari, or even PDF units that gained their respect, become brothers or sisters of fire. If one of such units is in trouble and hounds hear of it, they will drop whatever they are doing in order to come to their aid. Even if they have to break their current force in two, they will do so in order to uphold their oath. Amusingly, as Lazarine Hounds are many things but not talkative, many Brothers of Fire might not even know the chapter respects them so much to consider them thus. Not until a unit of white-cladded warriors come to their rescue and heal their wounds, slaughtering anything and anyone trying to stop them. Brotherhoods of Fire are not political and might not even be mutual, but the members of the Lazarine Hounds are fiercely loyal and protective of any they deem as brothers. Another unique aspect of the chapter is that they are accompanied by cyber mastiffs. When a neophyte is deemed ready to participate in combat operations, he is given a puppy to raise, train, and oversee the process of cybernetic enhancement. Those cyber mastiffs will accompany their master onto battlefield, both to protect inexperienced neophytes, but also to be their companions outside the battle. These mastiffs serve their masters their entire life, either sacrificing themselves to protect them, guarding their master's resting place if he were to fall first, or, very rarely, eventually perishing out of old age. Brothers of the Lazarine Hounds will only take one originally gifted cyber hound into combat through their service, never replacing it after its death, but often continuing to keep a memento of their companion in their quarters or on their person afterwards. While never bringing another dog into battle, some battle brothers will continue to train and breed the descendants of the original hound, donating the most promising puppies to the chapter to be granted to neophytes. Though it's been noted that especially respected brothers or sisters of fire may be gifted such puppy as well. Many see this as the greatest sign of respect and trust a chapter can show to an individual. With Marines only ever bringing one cyber mastiff into battle, they are mostly seen with neophytes or initiates, as most sword brethren will have lost their companion by the time they reached Valor rank. Thus, they are often seen helping young members of a chapter conduct search and rescue missions after battle, as the Marines might not yet have the training to assist in the field hospitals. Now, if that's not one super cool chapter idea, I don't know what is. Truly, a unique chapter with unique traditions. And they are definitively Imperial Fist successor chapter. Yeah, no doubt about it. There were no other hounds among the Astartes legions, after all. Anyway, let's get to the last fun creation on the list today. Baragonian Autonomous Militias by Pablo Ostrer Tag, an Imperial Guard regiment inspired by the Spanish Civil War anarchist militia. They come from Baragonian system, which is located in Segmentum Ultima. 4 planets, 3 of which are inhabited, orbit the system star. Baragon Prime is a civilized world. Secundus is industrial world. Tertius is a mining world, and Baragon Omega takes a role of planet-wide cemetery, with no permanent human presence there. Though on different planets, entire star system shares the government structure, that of Federation of Autonomous Communities. A commune can just as well be a village of only a dozen dwellings, as well as sprawling city. Each has a council which controls their own territory. The chain of councils go up, all the way to the system council and elected governor, which represents the will of the communes. Unlike in many imperial systems, the position of the governor is for life only on paper, as those who prove unworthy are dismissed or replaced. Education is highly valued among the people of a system, as there is a strong belief that people need to think in order to be part of the communes. Despite being free thinkers and eager to discuss things between each other, they remain loyal to the God Emperor and the Imperium. This strange fusion of systems and traditions can be tracked to the origins of a system. During the Age of Strife, Great Civil War engulfed the system. The so-called Reforging Wars were won by the anarchists, who set up the system of autonomous communes. They were a direct democracy at the time, with no higher authorities and no ability to enact quick and decisive actions in times of crisis. This proven to be their undoing when expedition of Mechanicum of Mars arrived in system. They landed on Baragon Tertius and built an outpost on it. Initially, both factions ignored each other until tech priests found that Baragonians had access to a piece of STC. The locals refused Mechanicum demands, looking down at their religious worship of technology. This refusal caused the start of so-called Techno-War, where technologically superior servants of a machine god won, secured the STC fragment, and in doing so, greatly reduced Baragonian technological sophistication. To add salt to the wound, tech priests decided to keep the outpost on the fourth planet operational and regularly sent messages and transmissions reminding the locals about how they were crushed by the might of the machine gods faithful. It is from there that Baragonians developed their deep distrust of Adeptus Mechanicus, a rare show of prejudice in overall rational population. Mere decades later, another fleet arrived, this one belonging to the Imperium of Man. Still recovering from the last war, Baragonians could only submit. The Imperium forced their first governor upon them, reducing power of the communes and eroding the democratic system. Worse, the people were forced into Imperial army to serve in the war they didn't believe in nor cared about. The rulers were resented, especially since they had close ties to Mechanicum, who started expanding their outpost, trying to turn it into a fully fledged Forge World. During the Horus Heresy, many forces turned traitor, and all Mechanicum in the system bowed to the will of a War Master Horus. It was the leader of surviving loyalists, Bonaventure Durutti, later known as Saint Durutti, who managed to rebuild loyalist forces and convince the masses that serving the Emperor was better than serving under War Master. He did so, speaking the words of Lectitio Divinitatus and proclaiming the true divinity of a god emperor. Through masterful planning and charisma, he turned more and more people to join his cause. Even some agents of a War Master who weren't truly loyal to him but the idea of free Baragonia. The loyalists started to gain ground, though everyone knew they had to act quickly before industrial might of local Mechanicum forces would turn the tide back to the side of the traitors. The desperate battle on Baragon Omega decided the fate of the system. A number of continent-killing weapons were housed there. Durutti called volunteers for a suicide mission and was rewarded with crowds of tough men ready to die in his name. In desperate battle over Ebro River outpost, loyalists achieved victory, firing all missiles, destroying not only the enemy fleet, but the slowly growing Forge World. Tragically, the enemy forces managed to fire one missile when they knew they couldn't win. The Ebro River outpost was its target. And so the heroes of Baragonia died, standing proud and laughing, seeing the death of War Master's fleet and Forge World before their end. Victory over remaining traitors came soon after, and Durutti kept his promise, restoring power of the councils while taking the position of a governor as representative of the people. He was also there when first stones of faith in the god emperor were laid down, and Baragonia was one of the first worlds to house churches of ecclesiarchy after the end of Horus Heresy. The world of Baragon Omega which was transformed into a husk after torpedoes hit it, was transformed into a cemetery world, in honor of those who sacrificed themselves in Battle of Erbo River Outpost. Former Mechanicum Outpost and Forge was transformed into a mining world after its crust was split open, exposing untapped veins of minerals and metals. A mocking payback to all tech priests who would gaze upon the ruined husk of their dark brothers. Now, with their history out of the way, let me tell you a bit more about the regiment itself. They are based on the loyalist forces who fought during the heresy. They value education and experience. They managed to make it so that many of the regiments return home from time to time to rebuild after their losses and to train future generations of guardsmen. Due to mistrust towards the priests of Mars, their equipment is created locally and produced mostly on Baragon Secundus, their industrial world. They still aren't technologically sophisticated, so their war gear is of slightly lower standard than what you could expect. Though, as industrious people, they have a lot of recovered equipment and their own in-system designs of autoguns, autocannons, and grenade launchers. They also produce their own vehicles, with an equally famous and infamous Lancer variant of Chimera APC. It's stripped-down, open-top Chimera, which rarely is equipped with multi-las or heavy bolter, but rather with grenade launchers, autocannons, or even strange miniguns. Similarly, they created a night tank, based on Chimera chassis, once more, which is an upgunned version of the Chimera with two turrets, one with anti-infantry weapon and one with big anti-armor gun. And though formidable against infantry and light units, it can't handle a proper tank. Lastly is Bombard self-propelled artillery, which uses arcane super heavy mortar instead of proper artillery gun. It carries a lot of destructive power, but lacks the range of proper artillery gun. Baragonians operate as irregular mechanized or mounted infantry. They ride into battle in their bizarre vehicles or on horsebacks. They usually work in small units and operate as support for other units, focusing on scouting and hit-and-run tactics. They can't handle heavy units or proper artillery. Either of such opponents can bring total ruin to the regiment. I think this is a nice addition to the list of homebrews. A unit inspired by Spanish anarchists is something quite unique and has a lot of potential. After 2 episodes where we had everything but servants of the Golden Throne, it really was time to show off some of the servants of the corpse god. But what do you think of those homebrews? Do tell me in the comments. And before you leave, remember to like, subscribe and ring-ding that bell. If you can, support me through Patreon or drop a donation through Ko-fi if you enjoy my work. Thank you for joining me, and I hope you enjoyed. Now, my dear viewers and listeners, remember, wherever you are, whatever you do, try to enjoy yourself while you can. I wish you most heretical day. Ta-ta!